Chapter 977. The night deepened a notch. The students of number 1 middle school had just finished their night revision. The entire school was brightly lit, especially the supper windows and small shops. There were many people queuing up. As the weather got warmer, there were more people buying ice water and Coke. Compared to when they first entered number 1 middle school, all the students were freed. The long forest was filled with people walking, and there were also some girls discussing topics and where to shop on Sunday. Shui Yaorao had wanted to use this time to play a few games at the internet cafe. Practicing her hand speed had become a habit of hers. She hadn't expected to be stopped by a boy she usually chatted with. The boy was from the next class. He stood tall and handsome in front of Shui Yaoyao, holding a basketball in his hand. He was the type of handsome boy with a good personality. When he smiled, his canine teeth would be revealed, adding to his good looks. This type of boy was well liked in school. Hence, Shui Yaoyao hadn't expected him to stop her. Behind him were two of his best friends. "We have a game later, do you want to watch?" the boy asked. Shui Yaoyao was still holding her book, smiling as she rejected him. The boy smiled. "Forget it, I'll change the question. Do you want to be my girlfriend?" Shui Yaoyao paused, lifting her head, about to reject him. Suddenly, a voice with a hint of a smile came from behind her. "Yaoyao, I don't think Auntie wants you to date in high school. Puppy love is forbidden in number 1 middle school." Shui Yaoyao's back froze. Even without turning back, she knew who the person was. The boy who confessed to her looked at Jiangzhua, who was holding a cigarette in one hand and had an outstanding aura. His eyes widened. "Young Master Jiang." Jiangzhua walked over, a cigarette in one hand, the other naturally placed on Shui Yaoyao's shoulder. He whispered into her ear, "Why don't you tell your classmates that you can't date for the next 3 years? Immersing." Shui Yaoyao's body stiffened even more. She knew Jiangzhua was reminding her of the time limit of their contract. She couldn't have a boyfriend for the next 3 years. That was the condition they had agreed on from the start. The boy didn't know what was going on. He really thought that she was more sensitive in high school and had to wait until after her sophomore year. His eyes dimmed. Shui Yaoyao looked at him. This was the first time someone had confessed to her. In the past, she had never been discovered by anyone, so why would anyone confess to her? Shui Yaoyao looked up and said, "Sorry." The boy interrupted her with a smile. "It's okay. You want to go to see university, right? I'll apply for that school too." This time, Shui Yaoyao was really stunned. When she said these words, it was a long time ago. At that time, she hadn't slimmed down and hadn't become an official Supreme Alliance member. She had just returned to school. "How did you know?" The boy looked at Shui Yaoyao, his gaze deep. "The first time I noticed you, you were helping your brother pack his bag. I always felt that you were very gentle. After that, I unknowingly wanted to know more about you, so I asked around." Shui Yaoyao was shocked. She never thought that someone would notice her at that time. Moreover, this person had always been a topic of discussion among girls. The boy noticed Shui Yaoyao's gaze and smiled again, his face a little red. "You probably don't remember, but there was one time when I hurt my leg while playing basketball. I was sitting at the railing, and you happened to pass me a Band-Aid. You even helped me wash my wound with water. At that time, I wanted to tell you that I really like you. Shui Yaoyao, I really like you." Shui Yaoyao's eyes trembled slightly. She looked into the boy's clear eyes. She wasn't like what he thought. He deserved a better girl. At least not someone like her who had already signed a contract with someone else. Jiangzhua stood beside Shui Yaoyao. He looked at the person's side profile. His fingers subconsciously tightened. The frustration in his chest intensified with Shui Yaoyao's reaction, as though he was really about to lose something. He pulled Shui Yaoyao's wrist over, his smile devilish. "She won't go to see university. She will only come to a university. And, I forgot to tell you, actually we are in a relationship like yours." With that, Jiangzhua pulled Shui Yaoyao into his arms, followed by a kiss, even though it was just a light peck. But at that moment, the boy was already frozen on the spot. Looking at this scene, his throat felt like it was blocked by something, and it was a little sour and uncomfortable. Jiangzhua didn't give him a chance to speak, his fingers holding Shui Yaoyao's wrist as he strode out of the school. Along the way, many people turned back to look at them. "Is that young Master Jiang?" Yes, it really is. Why is young Master Jiang here? Did he come back with young Master Qin to give a speech as an outstanding graduate? When did that happen? Young Master Jiang doesn't come here often. Isn't the person he's holding Shui Yaoyao's hand? Didn't Shui Yaoyao do all sorts of shameless things to chase after young Master Jiang, making him annoyed? Why is it now? You still don't know. Know what? Shui Yaoyao's mother married into the Jiang family. Young Master Jiang is probably here to bring her home. Stop spreading rumors. Although Shui Yaoyao really liked young Master Jiang, she never did anything. It's just that her diary seemed to have been leaked by someone. Everyone has one or two crushes. If you continue spreading rumors, it'll be too much. I'm relieved to hear that. Even though I don't hate Shui Yaoyao, she shouldn't have chased after young Master Jiang. The difference between them is too big. Shui Yaoyao listened to the discussions, but she didn't seem to feel much. It was probably because she had heard it for too long, and was used to the difference between them. Similarly, she knew that if she caused a ruckus in school, it would only embarrass Jiangzhua. There wasn't a need. It was probably because she had calmed down that she handled things differently from before. There's no one here now, you can let go of me. After leaving the school, Shui Yaoyao spoke calmly. She was very protective of her hand, not because she was spoiled, but because she had to participate in the most important competition tomorrow. The National League had finally come to this stage. Shui Yaoyao placed all her thoughts on it. She didn't notice that Jiangzua's side profile was so cold that it wasn't normal. Jiangzhua was wondering why she couldn't be like before. Even when she had heard the boy's confession, her reaction had become the reason for Jiangzua's subconscious annoyance. He knew he wasn't in the right state of mind, but the scene just now was like a well-edited movie, replaying in his mind continuously. Jiangzhua clenched his fists, his voice turning cold. I brought you out to let you know your current status. Shui Yaoyao looked at him. I already know. Today isn't the appointed time. I need to play a few games. As for the problem you are worried about, it won't happen for the next 3 years. Young Master Jiang, please do as you please. He had said before that he didn't like dirty people, and the hint he gave her was very obvious. But Shui Yaoyao didn't understand. She had already told him to do as he pleased, but he still followed behind her. At the start, his expression was cold. After walking for a while, when he saw that she had really gone to the internet cafe, his expression turned nonchalant. He even got Uncle Ian to open a computer and sat beside her. Shui Yaoyao didn't bother about him. Young Master's mood was probably that carefree sometimes. She took out her phone and opened Her Highness Jiu's WeChat. She was prepared to let Her Highness Jiu play a game with her, so they could familiarize themselves with the game. The moment she typed, the phone was snatched over. Jiangzhua looked at her, his usual demeanor at the nightclub. The person you're looking for is being beaten up by Qin Mo. Are you sending him a WeChat message so that Qin Mo can beat him up even more? The truth was just as Jiangzhua had said. Bojiu sat in the car, thinking about how to resist the Almighty's beauty and interrogation. As for the classroom, she wasn't worried. She wouldn't act so casually if she hadn't done some preparations. She was worried about what other tricks the Almighty had up his sleeves. The kiss and singing through the mask proved that the Almighty was 90% suspicious of her. Only the Almighty would suspect her. Even until now, Smith hadn't thought of her. There was also the fight at the square. If the Almighty had brought along the special forces from the cinema, she would have been caught on the spot even if Hoshino had been there. Hence, luck was important in such a huge gamble. Bojiu smiled mischievously. She wasn't going to admit it was her. That was the only benefit of being reborn. Young Master, we're here. The driver stopped the car. Bojiu's ears twitched. Qin Mo spoke faintly into her ears through the windbreaker. Do you remember whose mask it is? Bojiu asked in confusion. Isn't it Brother Mo's? Qin Mo didn't reply. He glanced at the youngster wrapped in his windbreaker, and reached out to carry her into the building, just like how he had carried a sack in school. Young Master, this is? Madame Zhang rushed over hurriedly. She could only see the youngster's long legs. Qin Mo replied, Young Master Jiu. Bojiu could clearly hear Madame Zhang's ah. This time she was embarrassed. Unlike what Bojiu had expected, the Almighty didn't interrogate her immediately. Instead, he cuffed her left wrist to the chair. Then he walked out. Bojio reached out to remove the windbreaker. But the Almighty's voice came from outside. Princess, look at her. Princess looked as though he had been entrusted with something important. He leaped up valiantly, landing on top of her head. Then he sat there motionlessly. Seriously. It was rather heavy for such a fat cat to be placed on top of her head. Princess looked solemn as he sat there, wagging his tail. This was the first time Bojio felt that her appearance was stupid. Fortunately, there wasn't anyone around. Chinemo had come out because of a call from Fatty. Captain, I just checked and got the footage. Little Spade didn't climb the wall. He was sleeping in the classroom and was punished with frog jumps. Captain, do you want to watch Little Spade do the frog jumps? It's enough to make you laugh for the entire day. Fatty's voice turned softer as he spoke. Even through the phone, he could feel his captain's icy cold aura. Little Spade, what exactly did you do to make Captain feel so down? Was he in the classroom the entire time? Chinmo's gaze dimmed. Didn't he go out? It should be. With his captain's words, Fatty started to doubt himself. Chinemo replied faintly, I understand, send me all the footage. Yes. After Fatty hung up, he touched his forehead, which was covered in sweat. Captain's aura was exceptionally strong today. Was it because of the finals tomorrow? Fatty wasn't aware that before Chinmo's call, Director Huang had sent him a message. It was regarding the motorcycle. We've found out who the owner is, but the car was reported lost a day ago. The person who lost the car is also from the esports industry, but he isn't from Tokyo. He's the captain of the Japanese team, Yusishin. We've checked his background. The esports industry is really different. Even the young master of the mafia is there. However, we've eliminated his alibi. He was in a video conference with a bunch of Dragon Mouth's subordinates that day, and the staff can testify that he was looking for his tomahawk. We followed the trail and confirmed that the car wasn't just transferred once, it had been transferred before, which means that he really lost the car. When he saw Yusishin's name, Chinmo's gaze changed. The further he looked, the colder his gaze became. That was because he recalled the two figures that had disappeared in front of his eyes. They had a tacit understanding with each other. Chinemo lowered his lids and typed. It's true that the car was lost, but who do you think would have the guts to steal a car from the Mafia Young Master? Or is the Mafia Young Master just a decoration, and the tomahawk can be stolen so easily? Director Huang was confused. Isn't Z always that bold? Chapter 978. Hoshino saw through Yusishin's thoughts and knew it was a good chance to leave some leeway. I'm not sure either. Yusishin glanced over at Hoshino, narrowing his eyes. If anyone dared to lie to his vice-captain, he would be furious. If you're not sure, then let's wait and see. The people from the Key Case Investigation Unit came today, and they're really smart. They immediately found me. I don't know who gave them the information, but it's obvious that they're starting to suspect you. I understand, I'll be careful. Hoshino's attitude was always the same, gentle as jade, but in reality, he was more tenacious than anyone else. This was something Yusishin found interesting. Tomorrow is the finals between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan. As an international team, you and I will be there, we can study Spadesy. Yusishin said this because the Japanese would be up against either Xiangnan or Supreme Alliance. Regardless of which team won the finals, it would be difficult for them to fight against them. They wanted to see the difference between them, and the other reason was because he was still doubting Bojio's authenticity. Instead of looking at Hoshino and not being able to say anything, he might as well use this opportunity to ask the other party involved. That night was destined to be a sleepless one. Too many people were waiting for the finals. Lin Feng wasn't aware of the others. He laid on his bed, unable to fall asleep because he had seen something he shouldn't have. Hence he stood up, preparing to stretch his limbs. Unexpectedly, while he was walking, he met a girl from the same school. The girl was walking with her dog, and Lin Feng followed her for a while. They chatted happily. Lin Feng didn't notice Yun Hu, who was out for a night run. After Lin Feng returned home, whistling as he prepared to enter the house, a voice came from beside him. Are you in a good mood? Lin Feng paused and turned around. He patted his chest and said, "Huzi, you'll scare people by appearing so suddenly." Yunhu's expression didn't look good. Fortunately, the night was in the way. He stood there with one hand in his pocket. He didn't walk towards Lin Feng. His entire being seemed to have melted into the night fog. His tone was calm. "What did you and that girl talk about? You seemed so happy." "It's just something I usually play with." Lin Feng didn't really care. Yunhu clenched his fists tightly because he knew that the girl had once wanted to confess to the guy in front of him, but he didn't know why she hadn't. It was probably because of a certain someone's uncertainty. He had to admit that this girl was smart. If she didn't confess, she could be with that guy every day. When the time was right, she could say that she liked him, and the effect would be 100 times better. That was it. Yunhu felt as though something was stuck in his throat. This was because he knew very well that Lin Feng had always wanted to find a girlfriend. Even though he had already promised to give it a try and be responsible to him, in essence, that fellow still liked girls. In just a few seconds, Yunhu thought of many things. When the words reached the tip of his tongue, they turned into a sentence. "It isn't just for fun, right? You have a movie date too." Lin Feng paused when he heard this. Yunhu's rationality was already on the verge of collapse when he saw Lin Feng chatting and laughing with the girl. Now that he saw Lin Feng's reaction, his eyes sunk. "Do you have any self-awareness that you already have a boyfriend?" Lin Feng, who was being lectured, frowned. In order to understand Yunhu's intentions, he downloaded a dating app. There were many people who had greeted Yunhu. There was even one who had gone out for a drink. He had only taken a short walk with a girl, and this person's words were so harsh. It was probably a mistake right from the start. Lin Feng still couldn't get used to it. He raised his lids and looked at Yunhu. I saw the messages on your dating app. Actually, do you think that the person who often leaves you messages is more suitable for you?" The reason why Lin Feng said this was because he saw Yunhu's reply to that person. He thought that the two of them had a good relationship in private. If it had been a normal person, someone like Yunhu wouldn't have agreed to meet up with that person. Lin Feng didn't know that the meeting that time was entirely because Yunhu couldn't get it. He just wanted to go out and relax and didn't think much about it. However, he had never imagined that things had already reached this stage. He still said that perhaps the other person was more suitable for him. He was pushing him away. He was the only one who cared about this relationship. As for Lin Feng, it was obvious that he was a straight man. But when he heard those words, Yunhu couldn't help but clench his fists. His chest felt as though there was a rock pressing down on it. Lin Feng lowered his head and said, "I saw both of your replies. That person is going to study abroad. Actually, have you ever thought that because we grew up together, you can't tell if it's because you like me or because you're used to me? So what exactly are you trying to say?" When Yunhu said this, his throat felt a little stifled. Lin Feng glanced up with a rare seriousness. "I think it's really stupid for us to try dating. I drank too much that night. Why don't you change the method and let me atone for my sins?" The reason why Lin Feng said this was because he saw the common topic between that person and Yunhu online. In reality, he and Yunhu didn't have this point. Other than gaming, their interests and studies were different. It was rare for them to be on the same level. It was probably because the older he grew, the more he wanted to inherit his family's company. Yunhu, on the other hand, was pursuing something of a higher level. A famous overseas university had personally sent a letter for him to do research. Lin Feng could even imagine the difference between him and Yunhu in the future. Now they still had games to talk about. When that time came, they probably wouldn't have anything to talk about. After all, in real life, two people on different levels wouldn't have a topic to talk about. Over time, they would become like his parents. Even though Lin Feng's family was wealthy, that was how Father Lin and Mother Lin interacted. That was why Lin Feng wanted to find a girl who had a cheerful personality and didn't think too much like him. She would only sleep after eating and occasionally go to the supermarket on the weekends. That was the kind of life he would have. But it was obvious that Yunhu's daily life was much more elegant than his. Sometimes he thought that it probably had something to do with the fact that his grandfather was gone and the Yun family was still in power. Even though the two families lived opposite each other, their nature was different. He and Yun, who used to be people of the same world. In the future, they would rarely be. The uncertainty of their youth faded. How long could Yun-hoo's love last? Hence he was really stupid. Why didn't he think of giving it a try back then? It would ruin their relationship if they tried it once. Lin Feng didn't want to see that in 1 year, 3 years, or even 5 years, they would have nothing to say to each other and be together reluctantly. That wasn't what he expected. He predicted that by the time that person came back from abroad, he would also be living like a dog. That way, the difference between them wouldn't be especially big. Listening to the man's words, Yun-hoo suddenly felt as though he was on a roller coaster. Not long ago, he had finally agreed to try it out with him. Even now, when he closed his eyes, he could still remember how happy he had been. But because of the appearance of a girl, he felt that it was stupid to give it a try. He wanted to retract everything. At the end of the day, he would never be comparable to those girls. Yun-hoo also knew that this wasn't the most painful time. After they broke up, with the arrival of graduation, this person would soon have a girlfriend. What he was most afraid of was that one day, that person would hold a girl's waist and laugh at him. "Who, I'm going to get married." Whenever he thought of that scene at night, a nerve in the depths of his heart would be pulled. The pain made him want to bend over. If he hadn't tasted the happiness in heaven, perhaps it wouldn't be so unbearable. Ever since that guy said that he would try dating, he had been very nice to him. It was as if they were dating. Although when he held his hand and interlocked their fingers, he would still mutter in a low voice or stiffen his whole body. No matter which reaction it was, it only made him feel happy. It was as though happiness meant that as long as he was with this guy, it didn't matter what they did, including those childish things like holding hands and sharing a bowl of instant noodles. Or when he was tired from practicing his hand speed, that person's head would lean over. Often he would be the one doing the review. He would lean against him to sleep, just to be able to accompany him. It had been like this since the beginning. But in the future it would no longer be like this. After the National League, this guy would take over the company and gradually leave the esports industry. Not only would their gaming time be reduced, even the number of times they would meet wouldn't be as frequent as now. Because graduation would mean that they would really be adults. Yun-hoo understood this guy. Since he mentioned it, it meant that he had decided to do it. He wanted to end their relationship. It was obvious. Yun-hoo understood. Because of that, even his breath felt cold. Admit it, even if this person temporarily agreed to date you because you tricked him, he will never fall in love with you. Yun-hoo had to suppress all his emotions to swallow the question of why not try again. Instead, he stretched out his arm and trapped that person against the wall. His gaze was a little low. "You want to redeem yourself in another way? Sure, I don't have too many conditions. After the National League, if we win Xiangnan, you will let me sleep back." With that, Yun-hoo released his hand that was pressing on that person's wrist. He took one last deep look at Lin Feng before walking out of the room. Lin Feng was left leaning against the wall, his entire expression petrified. Sleep, sleep, sleep back? Did Yun-hoo want to *CK him? Lin Feng's first reaction was anger. After his anger subsided, he thought carefully about why Yun-hoo would suggest such a method. He had seen other people's replies. In their industry, people like Yun-hoo were rare, and would never bow down to others. He had taken advantage of Yun-hoo and now he wanted Yun-hoo to take revenge. There wasn't anything wrong with this logic. If that would make Yun-hoo feel better, Lin Feng took a deep breath. If it wasn't half an hour, it was at least an hour. He smoked nonstop, extinguishing one cigarette after another. In the end, he straightened his body and took out his phone. He sent a message to the familiar profile picture. "Sure, let's sleep back and we'll be even." The unique sound effect of WeChat rang out. Yun-hoo, who was sitting in front of the computer, suddenly didn't know where to touch. When he saw the message, his gaze stiffened. He glanced at the window opposite him, swallowing the bitterness in his throat. The last thing he wanted to do was to be even with someone. Being even meant that both parties were even and they didn't owe each other anything. Perhaps, ending this relationship didn't mean anything to him. Yun-hoo chuckled. When he placed his phone down, even his black hair hung down. He didn't turn on the lights, just sitting in front of the computer. After a long while, he made a call with a hoarse voice. I have the answer to the question your school asked me previously. After the competition, I'll head over. Ah, that's great. The person on the other side spoke in pure English. We look forward to your joining Yin. Yin, who couldn't hear what the person behind him was saying. He reported his passport number numbly and filled in some information before sending it to the designated email. After he was done, it was almost 11 p.m. After the competition, they would really be worlds apart. Hence, he didn't want to have any regrets for this competition. He also didn't want to see that person smoking in the toilet with reddened eyes after losing the competition and blaming himself. That person, when he was working hard and playing games seriously, was more adorable than ever. The night sky darkened. Under normal circumstances, the internet cafe would be open for supper. Usually, at this time, the boss loved to stand in the middle with the air conditioner and order takeaway. However, at this moment he closed the shop early and was making the final settlement. Before the customer left, he smiled. Tomorrow is the finals, right? Did you meet Xiangnan? Finally, you have to work hard, uncle. This was the fifth customer who said that. The customer wasn't a fan of Yin Wuyao. He held a cigarette in his mouth, changing his hand. I will. In the distance, there was a tall building that pierced through the clouds. The Feng family was on the top floor. Feng Yi sat on the sofa, finalizing the next day's schedule and the order of the fans' entrance. After hanging up, he tugged at his tie and saw his brother checking the things he needed to bring. The team uniform, the standard earpiece, and the wrist guard. Chapter 979. Feng Yi glanced over at his brother, breaking into a smile. Every elder brother would have a sense of accomplishment when they saw their younger brother. Ah, this kid has finally grown up. After Feng Shang was done checking, he gave Coco a call. The kid had good intentions. He knew that Coco had been under a lot of pressure recently and wanted to console him. But before he could speak, the person on the other end said, "You don't want me to care about what others think of me, right?" "I know." And. Feng Shang wanted to say something but was interrupted by Coco again. Coco interrupted him again. "And the maneuvering, right? Don't worry, I'm already very good at it. Brother's skills are amazing, and I have millions of fans. Tomorrow I'll definitely lead the way." Feng Shang spoke again. "No, it's not." "Not what?" The wrist guard, right? I brought everything, don't worry." Feng Shang wanted to say something, but he was blocked. His face was red from holding back. It wasn't easy for a child to say something like that. "Who wants to talk to you about that? I just want you to relax and remember to bring your rabbit." Coco paused, muttering, "You aren't stuttering anymore." Feng Shang paused as well. Coco coughed heavily. "I know, I was nervous just now, that's why I said so much. I'm not nervous anymore." With that, Coco threw himself onto the bed, his face blocked by the plush toy. "Feng Shang, we are finally going up against Xiangnan. In the past, many people said that Supreme Alliance relied on our looks to win. Even though that wasn't wrong, this time, we can finally tell everyone that Supreme Alliance has skills." Immersing. Feng Shang didn't know what to say, but his heart hadn't stopped. They could finally stand in the National League to prove themselves. This was something he had never dared to think about in the past. Feng Shang glanced out of the window, the throbbing in his eyes causing Feng Yi to stand up. "It's past 11, go to sleep. Alarm clock." Feng Shang was afraid he would wake up late. Feng Yi chuckled lightly. "I'll wake all of you up tomorrow morning. The competition is at 10 a.m., there's enough time." "Okay." Feng Shang was very nimble when he said one word. After entering the room, he turned off the lights and lay on the bed. Still worried, Feng Shang sat up and confirmed the things he wanted to bring. Shui Yaoyao was in the same situation as him. Jiang Zhua, who was lying on the bed, raised his brows slightly. Even when the person laid back down, he was still holding on to the strap of the backpack. Shui Yaoyao's gaze fell on the logo on the backpack. It was the symbol of Supreme Alliance. A ball of fire burned in his eyes. Shui Yaoyao pressed her hand on her heart, telling herself to have a good night's sleep, so that she would be in a better condition for tomorrow's match. The dart hit an esports poster on the wall. That was the worst year Supreme Alliance had ever lost. Lin Feng still remembered that year. He really cried like a little bastard. It was not because of anything else, but because of the way the man lowered his head. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, when had that guy ever been so miserable? If only his mechanics had been a little better, a little smarter, a little more thoughtful. Perhaps he could hold on until the captain returned. The entire team's pressure was on Yin Hu. But he didn't even share the burden. Lin Feng looked at the poster that he had shot. Then he jumped back and threw himself onto the bed. In real life, the gap between him and Yin Hu was huge. In the game, he didn't want to be left behind too much. This was probably the last time they fought side by side. He didn't want to have any regrets. He wanted to win back all the glory from that year. He didn't want to be a burden to that person anymore. That was probably Lin Feng's only feeling at this moment. Qin family. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster in his arms. He got up and prepared the things for the youngster. He opened his laptop and logged into his game account. Just for a moment. The world seemed to be boiling. There was a constant stream of messages. What's going on? Why is Almighty Qin online at this time? Is he too nervous before the match? That's possible. My Coco was a little distracted during the live stream today. He must be thinking about tomorrow's match. Who wouldn't be nervous if their opponent is Xiangnan? They didn't know that Qin Mo had come online to give someone a self-made silver gun. It should have been given to the youngster on the bed a few days ago, but due to recent events, it hadn't been given out. If Feng Yi had seen Qin Mo giving the silver gun to Bo Jiu, he would have been shocked. The silver gun had a special meaning. It was a silver gun that Qin Mo had made when he had first started playing the game. Qin Mo would fuse any good material into it. In that year, this silver gun had become Qin Mo's most commonly used weapon until the character changed, and the 3000 knife cutting appeared. The silver gun had always been there. It could already be called a treasured weapon. Back then, the materials obtained in the game were all rare materials. Now they were hard to find. That was how precious the silver gun was. But now, the Almighty had given it to Jiu. Xiangnan's Zhao Sampeng was the most agitated when Qin Mo came online. He typed in the Alliance's group chat. Qin Mo, are you really nervous? If you are, just say it. We won't laugh at you. Because of this, many players in the group jumped out and started making jokes one after another. Qin Mo glanced at the page, arching a brow. He moved his mouse and sent a video leisurely into the group chat. The video wasn't anything else. It was the secret hidden in the electronic igniter that Bo Jiu had given him. Zhao Sampeng was still sitting there with his legs crossed, typing furiously, shouting that he wanted to challenge Qin Mo to a duel. The others in the group shared the same sentiments. They wanted to use this rare opportunity to tease Qin Mo unexpectedly. Qin Mo sent a video over. Zhao Sampeng assumed it was a useful video. When he first opened it, he was watching it seriously. Towards the end, the corners of his mouth twitched. What the hell is this thing? Qin Mo and Little Spade's lovey-dovey clip? It wasn't just Zhao Sampeng. The others who opened the video, including the other teams, were forced to recommend the Mo and Jiu couple, who said Qin Mo was nervous. If he came out, they wouldn't beat him to death. He wasn't nervous, he was even more shameless than usual. At this moment, Qin Mo typed a line of words. I'm looking at the present Spade gave me. Single people like you probably wouldn't understand. Everyone knew that Zhao Sampeng's greatest pain was not having a partner. Qin Mo's words caused Zhao Sampeng to go offline in tears. He turned towards the person beside him. Captain, I would like to request to keep a close eye on Qin Mo tomorrow. There's no need. Almighty Xiao stood up. Supreme Alliance has a fatal weakness. It is now showing. Zhao Sampeng was confused. Weakness? Where is it? Chapter 980. Weakness. Zhao Sampeng's eyes lit up like a howling wolf. In his mind, Supreme Alliance was much stronger than before. Especially after witnessing Little Spade and that shameless Qin Mo's teamwork. He felt that he wouldn't be able to stop them. Now that he heard his captain's words, he was pleasantly surprised. However, Xiao Feng didn't look very happy. His eyes looked a little gloomy. Zhao Sampeng called out again. Captain, what is Supreme Alliance's weakness that you mentioned? Qin-mo. Zhao Sampeng's expression froze the moment he heard Xiao Feng's name. Qin-mo? That insanely strong fellow? How was that possible? His hand injury hasn't healed. Xiao Feng stood up, his eyes fixed on Zhao Sampeng. I'm 100% sure now. Zhao Sampeng opened his mouth with difficulty. But the teamwork between him and Little Spade was clearly incredible. In a 2v2, no one would be able to stop them. Even if Qin Mo's hand wasn't healed, Spade Z's speed would be able to make up for his weakness. Xiao Feng pointed at the map on the screen. Even though this is a siege game, the location isn't fixed. In the past, no one dared to enter Supreme Alliance's jungle, because if they weren't careful, they would be killed. But now it's different. Supreme Alliance wants to defeat us, so they have to drag the competition to the team battle. It's all about teamwork and coordination in the middle and jungle. Supreme Alliance's sorcerer is a newbie. Even though he's skilled, his awareness isn't enough to keep up with Qin Mo's pace. Spadesy won't always be by Qin Mo's side. A wandering hero would be useless if he's restrained. After listening to his captain's analysis, Zhao Sampeng forgot what he wanted to say. He was well aware of his captain's ability. It wasn't just him. Almost everyone knew that their captain had an exceptional ability to make judgments. This was also why people often compared Qin Mo to their captain, because they were truly evenly matched opponents. The computer screen was still emitting a faint blue light. At this moment, a person walked in. She was wearing a team uniform and high heels. She was very beautiful. She had a slender waist, long legs, and a good figure. She was a domineering lady in the esports industry. This was the nickname that the fans had given Goddess Luoluo. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. As she had been playing for too long, her voice was a little hoarse. That person probably never thought that there would be a day when he would need someone to protect him. Xiao Feng didn't say anything. Beauty Luo smiled and placed her hand on his shoulder. Captain, you don't feel good seeing your CP in such dire straits, do you? Xiao Feng glanced at her, his expression indifferent. There's no such thing as being down and out in the esports arena. You can only give it your all. You're handsome, so whatever you say is right. At this point, Beauty Luo glanced at Fatty. Brother Fatty, you're affecting my pursuit of my idol. Xiao Feng. Zhao Sampeng thought. Damn it, I've been attacked by 2 public displays of affection in one night. These people are inhumane. I thought your idol was Spadesy. Xiao Feng glanced at his subordinate. Beauty Luo smiled. I like him too. Playing esports allows you to gather countless male idols. In the past, I liked Qin Mo the most. His abstinence, no wonder he was pushed down by Spadesy. He was already at the door, but when he heard this, he turned abruptly. What did you say? Qin Mo is the one at the bottom? F***ck, Little Spade is good. He's manly. That's why you can't look down on my brother Spade, Beauty Luo reminded him. Zhao Sampeng arched a brow. Don't worry, someone is restraining him. Beauty Luo chuckled lightly. That's good, we can finally compete with Supreme Alliance openly. Qin Mo once attacked the 3 of us alone. Isn't it time to get back at him? Women are the most vicious, Zhao Sampeng commented objectively. But I like it. Regardless of the situation, giving one's all in the competition was the true respect for one's opponent. However, this did not affect the relationship between friend and foe that was born in this generation. Before Zhao Sampeng went to bed, he took out his phone and scrolled through his official Weibo. He wanted to see how his adorable fans were cheering him on. Unexpectedly, the first thing he saw was a post from his good friend. It was a chat history in the Alliance's WeChat group with a video attached. It summed it up in one sentence. I can't be the only one being fed dog food. Qin Mo's video had caused a huge public outcry. There were so many singles in the esports industry. Zhao Sampeng would definitely join in and repost it, but he hadn't expected his fans to show their concern. Fatty, don't cry, stand up and masturbate. It must be hard to watch Almighty Qin flaunt his love every day. Don't worry, you won't get the chance. Fatty, I've liked you for 3 years. I just want to ask you. It's been 3 years. Where's your girlfriend or boyfriend? Don't be like that, we love Fatty so we have to be considerate. Are there any more videos like this? Fatty, watch more, you can find inspiration. Who knows, maybe one day someone will take a liking to you. Zhao Sanpeng. F***CK. Take back that 10,000 years limit. Take it back. Unknowingly, the two of them were trending again. Honestly, the fans were relieved to see how close their idols were in the esports industry. Because only in such a healthy competitive environment would they be able to see an exciting competition. At this moment, in the crime squad, Lin Chuntao stood outside the door, his eyes fixed on Director Huang. Regardless, please promise me that the captain will head out tomorrow to watch the competition. Someone has proven that he isn't the culprit behind the maiden's sacrifice, right? Little Huang had never seen a person with such perseverance. He had been pestering him for 5 hours. Wherever he went, this handsome guy followed him. Even when he went to the toilet, this kid followed him. Little Huang almost had kidney failure just by looking at him. Kids nowadays, why were they so stubborn? Even though he isn't the culprit, he was a part of the organization. There are many things we need to understand, Director Huang said. Lin Chuntao licked his chapped lips. He didn't do anything evil. He didn't say anything even after you brought him in. This competition is too important to him. It's the National League because of Qin Mo and Xiaofeng. Mr. Huang, do you know that he wasn't inferior to either of them in the past? Chapter 981. Director Huang didn't know much about esports, but when he saw Lin Chuntao's pleading eyes, he hesitated. Rao Rong couldn't leave the crime squad. He was the only one who knew the murderer's background and rough appearance. Besides, Rao Rong was in danger. The murderer might kill him to silence him. Bringing him out of the crime squad was the best way to explain the situation. Right at this moment, an off-road vehicle that didn't belong to the military stopped quietly beside him. 2 Special Forces soldiers in camouflage uniforms hopped out. Director Huang was stunned when he saw their faces. Why are you guys in the city? Director Huang, what are you talking about? We are humans too. If we aren't in the city, where are we? Magician walked over, a devilish smile on his face. My boss wants us to bring someone along. Director Huang arched a brow. Who? Rao Rong. Magician chuckled. Director Huang, don't panic. The crime squad is complicated and there is a traitor. It wouldn't be safe to leave an important witness here. Besides, we are humane and he is an esports player. Regardless of the reason, we should let him see what he wants to see. Those are my boss's words. Besides, the crime squad can't afford to lose an important witness, so the handsome me will stay in place of Rao Rong. Director Huang wanted to say more. Magician reached out, producing an identification. There were 5 stars on it, the country's special forces. This meant that they had to cooperate with the other party. Director Huang puffed out his big belly. The crime squad isn't a problem, but Rao Rong might not cooperate. He hasn't said a word since he came in. He might not leave with you. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. Magician turned towards Lin Chuntao. Boss said that as long as we bring this brother in, Rao Rong will leave with us. Lin Chuntao was speechless. He was very curious who the boss was. Director Huang's struggle was futile. He could only lead the way and open a room. There was everything in the room, just that it was a little small. Rao Rong laid on the bed, his back facing them. Director Huang called him twice, but he didn't respond. Lin Chuntao's eyes reddened as he looked at the tall figure. Captain. Director Huang watched as Rao Rong's shoulders trembled slightly before he bolted upright. His movements were agile, and he didn't look like he was asleep. He glanced at Lin Chuntao, his voice raspy. Why are you here? I'm here to pick you up. Lin Chuntao said as he took out his phone. Look, the official Weibo account has already started posting. Don't you want to see who wins in the end? Rao Rong's gaze deepened. I'm no longer interested in esports. You're lying. Lin Chuntao flipped through his phone again. If you're really not interested in esports anymore, why didn't you agree to Boss Zhang's message asking you to arrange for his nephew to compete and make him famous? It's because he still has esports in his heart. Rao Rong paused. Lin Chuntao didn't care whether he was willing or not. He grabbed him and said to the special forces, let's go. Rao Rong was startled. He probably hadn't expected the chatterbox who used to follow him around would become so bold. But he couldn't shake his hand off. To a professional esports player, the hand was the most important. Director Huang watched as Rao Rong furrowed his brows, allowing them to drag him out. His gaze was filled with disbelief. After all, Rao Rong had been here for 2 days and 1 night, which showed that he didn't trust anyone. On the surface, he appeared refined, but just a look at his emotionless eyes showed that he had never tried to accept anyone. It was probably related to his past. Director Huang had seen Rao Rong in his youth. He had been as dazzling as the sun, but now he was like water in a deep pond, separated by a layer of cold fog. Not many people could get close to him. Magician laughed, locking himself up. He turned to Director Huang. Our boss didn't guess wrongly, did he? Director Huang didn't want to see him again, intending to slam the door shut. Wait a minute. Magician arched a brow. Order a takeaway for me. You guys don't have any good food here. I'm going to die in the line of duty. Director Huang thought to himself, how can I order takeaway when my witness is gone? How can you be so optimistic? He rejected the order decisively. After slamming the door shut, the resentment in his heart dissipated. Magician laughed lightly, caressing the bridge of his nose. He glanced over and pressed down on his earpiece. Young master, everything has been arranged according to your instructions. Do your best for tomorrow's competition. Your voice is too cheap. Qin Mo's voice was calm as he hung up. Magician. How could I be despised by my boss for a mission in the middle of the night? That boy must be beside him. Magician's guess was right on this point. Qin Mo walked to the large bed not far away. He looked at the furry head hidden in the quilt and smirked. Then he bent down and lifted the person's chin. He kissed the face that he loved and hated at the same time. The next day, Feng Yi woke up earlier than anyone else, making phone calls to wake her up. When he called, the youngster opened her eyes, caressing her messy silver hair. She stretched lazily before standing up and placing the phone on her ear. Hello, little spade, it's time to wake up. Feng Yi was indeed a qualified manager, putting on his smiling face early in the morning. Bo Jiu yawned, glancing at the Almighty who was still on the bed. She replied devilishly, he's already awake. The sight of the Almighty lying on the bed made her heart itch to bully him. His thick lashes were the same as when he had been young. All right. Feng Yi smiled. Let's meet at the entrance of the club in an hour. All right. Bo Jiu reached for her trousers. They were wrinkled and couldn't be worn anymore. She couldn't help but feel troubled. Just as she was hesitating if she should take a shower, another phone rang. This time, it was from the Almighty. Bo Jiu hadn't intended to pick up the call for the Almighty, but when she saw that it was Feng Yi, she lifted her lips and answered. Hello. Feng Yi. His first reaction was to check if he had pressed the repeat button. No, it was indeed young Master Qin. Bo Jiu admired Feng Yi's pause and was about to laugh. Chapter 982. Bo Jiu didn't react. On the other end of the line, Feng Yi's lips started to twitch. Bastard. He had been fed a huge mouthful of dog food so early in the morning. This world. Feng Yi didn't want to say anything else and hung up decisively. Bo Jiu heard the busy tone and glanced over. Brother Mo, you seem to have frightened her. Qin Mo arched a brow, sweeping the screen before reaching for his phone. Just as he was about to reach for it, the person in his arms pushed him into the blanket. Qin Mo's fingers stilled, watching the silver-haired youngster with bright eyes and a smile on her face. That furry head and 2 tufts of hair arched up like 2 ears. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like his cat. All it lacked was a tail behind it that could be wagged here and there. But after a night of sleep, she had become bolder. What are you doing? Qin Mo allowed the youngster to press against his chest, his elegant and handsome face unchanged. Bo Jiu didn't intend to do anything. She just stared at the Almighty who had just woken up. She wanted to pounce on him. Her childhood habits were rather harmful and she couldn't restrain herself. If it was any other day, I would be at your mercy, but not today. Qin Mo removed her hand, his tone calm as though he was talking to Princess. Go wash up, don't be so ferocious early in the morning. Bojio. Ferocious? Her? With that, Chinemo stood up, put on his trousers and walked towards the door. I'll go get my clothes. Bojio draped the blanket over her body, crossing her long legs as she sat on the bed. She watched the Almighty's erect upper body, looking as though he wasn't interested in her. She pursed her lips stubbornly. The princess arrogantly strolled back and forth in front of her, as if saying, "You've finally been abandoned by your master." Bojio arched a brow, tugging on princess's tail. Even if she couldn't handle the Almighty, she could still handle a cat. When Chinemo took the uniform from Madame Zhang, the image of the youngster pouncing on him was still fresh in his mind. For some reason, he felt that this scene was very familiar. Chinemo didn't know if it was because he liked her too much that he kept thinking about her when she was young. As usual, Auntie Zhang made a Chinese-style breakfast that both of them liked. It was very nutritious. He didn't eat much as most of it went into her stomach. Before he left, he pulled her over, reaching out to pull her collar up, covering her neck. That was when Bojio noticed the hickeys, her ears burning. But she also noticed that every time the Almighty tidied her clothes, his side profile would always be gentle. It seemed like he had been like this since he was young. What do you mean you've been like this since you were young? Chinemo glanced sideways at the youngster's face, his brows furrowing slightly. Bojio didn't expect to blurt out the words she wanted to say. She tilted her head and asked, "Are you trying to say that Brother Emo has always been good at dressing people?" "I didn't wear it for anyone." Chinemo retracted his hand and looked at the youngster with it in his pocket. Bojio didn't say anything. She thought to herself, where did the little puppy who liked to help her put on clothes come from? Of course, she wouldn't tell the Almighty that. At this moment, Chinemo suddenly asked, "Speaking of which, did we meet when we were young?" Chapter 983. I didn't just see you, I slept with you. Do you know that? With Bojio's unrestrained personality, she would have said it a long time ago if she hadn't been worried. Bojio was afraid she would say too much at the mention of their childhood. She tilted her head and pretended to tidy her sleeves. Her silver hair fell down, concealing her expression. No. Is that so? Chinemo watched the youngster, a hint of a smile on his face as he brushed her fringe. No. Why are you so depressed? It seems like you wish we had met when we were younger. Bojio didn't know how to reply. She wanted him to remember her if he could, but she was also worried that the Almighty would recall something and expose her. What a worrisome world. Why are you getting more depressed? Chinemo glanced at her, his lips curved upwards as he reached out to caress her furry head. Bojio glanced up, giving him 5 words. Baby, don't speak. Chinemo. Bow. Bay. Young Master Chin narrowed his eyes. What kind of a dress was that? Bojio loved watching the Almighty wake up. Noble, restrained and alluring. Especially when he was in his uniform, looking like a grown-up puppy. She had to touch the face of something she liked. Since young, she had had this habit. In the past, she would touch it. Today wasn't the same. For some reason, Chinemo seemed more and more similar to his younger self. After she was done, Bojio turned and continued to tidy her clothes. That set of flirting moves was done very smoothly. Chinemo arched a brow, tilting his head as though he was breaking into a laugh. How exactly did he fall for such a gangster? Bojio didn't know what he was thinking about. After taking advantage of the Almighty, she felt refreshed. It wasn't a long time from the Chin family's house to the club. The moment they boarded the Land Rover, Chinemo opened his ultra-thin laptop and opened the hero icon on the screen. Then he turned towards the youngster. Log into your game account. Hers. Bojio didn't know what the Almighty was planning, but she took the laptop over. Her fingers moved swiftly and she logged in within a second. But before she could enter the city, a notification popped up. Your friend Chinemo has gifted you a weapon. Weapon? Bojio glanced up at the Almighty. Open it. Chinmo's voice was calm. She was reminded of the gold and diamonds he had given her when she had first met him. As expected, the world of the rich was so straightforward. The weapon given by the Almighty was definitely not inferior. Bojio smiled faintly and accepted. A white dragon spear appeared in her hands instantly, The entire body of the spear was emitting a silver glow. If it wasn't made of special materials, it wouldn't be possible to have such an effect. Moreover, it didn't look like it was sold in the game store. Could it be self-made? Bojio's eyes lit up. She clicked on the attributes of the spear. It had a blood drinker pierce attack and was very light in the hand. Most importantly, it had a critical hit. Such a spear was simply a weapon specially made for assassins. You will be in charge of today's competition. Chinemo looked at the youngster, his eyes as deep as the sea. Bojio frowned. She wanted to ask why he wasn't the one leading. Wasn't Xiangnan's captain their archenemy? They even formed a couple. Archenemies formed a couple. If she had the chance, she would have to educate her fans that they shouldn't form a couple so casually. Unfortunately, before she could speak, the Almighty reached out and tapped the time on the laptop screen. His voice was calm. You have 15 minutes to familiarize yourself with the weapon. Head to the training ground. Why would I go to the training ground now? Bojio bit on her lollipop, looking up devilishly. Even if I want to go, I have to go to the arena. The FC King of Zone C wasn't just for show. Bojio hit her team's ID. She started a random 5-on-5 match. The system automatically assigned the players to the team. Ever since Bojio became popular, there had been many Spade Z circles, Spade Z Geo, Spade J, or Spade Q in the game. Hence, when Bojio entered, her teammates didn't think she was real. They wanted her to choose a tank. But they didn't force her to choose. They just felt that it would be difficult without a tank. 2 assassins weren't enough to kill in the wilderness. Hence the game started. Her teammate sent a message. Let's fight steadily. All right. No problem. But just as the others were replying, Bojio controlled her character and swept across the wilderness. But just as the others replied, Bojio controlled her character and swept across the wilderness. This time, she didn't go to the wilderness to familiarize herself with the weapon. First, she brought a wave of minions. Then she jumped. When she saw that the opponent was almost done with the blue beasts, she used her big move and successfully stole the kill. The opponent started cursing. F***CK surround him. It had to be said that the opponent wasn't bad. The moment Bojio went to the wilderness, the sorcerer and the bottom lane immediately supported her. The 3 of them trapped Bojio in the middle. At this moment, Bojio paused in the bushes. When she used her big move, she used another move and jumped over the tower. When she reached the red beasts, her eyes lit up. Brother Mo, this gun kills the beasts quickly. Killing beasts quickly meant that her attack was strong. In addition, she had the ability to drink blood. Bojio, who had been at half HP, was back to full HP after killing the opponent's wilderness. At this moment, the other 3 chased after her, scolding, "The opponent, aren't you shameless? What's so shameless about stealing the kill?" Bojio didn't forget to type as she danced. This was her usual style of gaming. This is a strategy. F***CK your strategy. After the explosion, they sprinted over but they couldn't even see her. Where is she? Beside her. No one knew who shouted. Then he heard a sound coming from the game. First kill. After Bojio's HP was full, she turned and used a big move to kill the opponent's main attacker. Then, she used 3 moves to jump over the wall and return to her own wilderness. Her teammates were dumbfounded. She killed someone so quickly? That wasn't the end. After a wave of beasts, she moved to the bottom lane and another KO. She was leading the way so quickly? Everyone was in a daze. It was a 5v5. After 5 minutes, the opponent felt that there was nothing left for him to live for. It was a 10-2 loss. He was pushed out of the city and decided to take a headshot. The youngster looked at the victory sign on the screen. She lifted her head and smiled. Brother Mo, this spear isn't bad. More importantly, the person using it is handsome. Even the spear looks valiant. Chinemo didn't reply. He reached out and pinched the youngster's face. His thin lips were arched upwards. It was a beautiful sight. But the playfulness in his eyes was still there. It seemed to be saying, "Why are you so thick-skinned?" Bojio didn't reply. She liked the gift the Almighty had given her. She looked left and right and clicked on the white dragon spear's attributes. She looked at it for about 3 minutes before keeping it. Bojiu was smart. She could guess the time the spear had been made. She had seen the Almighty's videos in the past. At that time, the Almighty had used this white dragon spear. It was because she knew how handsome he had been back then. His nimble movements. His explosive attacks. No one dared to get close to the silver spear. That was the real Qin Mo. Now, the spear was in her hands. She couldn't embarrass herself. It was time to win back all the pride she had lost. The National League. It was being broadcasted online and offline. The number of fans wasn't any lesser than when a superstar held a concert. Even before the contestants entered the stadium, there were more than 10 media outlets at the scene. This time, the three-dimensional LCD screen was not only on the inside of the arena, but also on the largest advertising space in the square. It was broadcasting this match. Needless to say, it was being broadcasted live in all the internet cafes. For everyone who played the game. It was a grand occasion. Melon seeds, peanuts, cola and chips were prepared. Everyone stopped playing and looked at the screen hanging in the middle of the internet cafes. The bustling scene wasn't inferior to the World Cup in the past. There were waves of topics on Weibo. It could be said that today, there wasn't anyone more popular than the word Supreme Alliance of Xiangnan. Now many people understood that esports was similar to other sports. Indomitable and never giving up. That was the spirit of esports. The two shoutcasters were already in place. This time, the shoutcasters were experienced in international esports. As they sat there, the fans in the stadium stretched their necks. They knew that once the shoutcasters were in place, it would be time for the players to enter the stadium. Prepare for the crew. The director stood at the back and gestured to all the cameramen. The shoutcasters wore their headphones. The staff adjusted the volume. The tense atmosphere was about to explode. In the lounge, Qin Mo stood up, his deep gaze sweeping across everyone. He didn't ask if they were ready. Instead, he stretched out his right hand. Supreme Alliance. Victory. The voice came from their chests. Everyone had been preparing for this match for a long time. It was so long that they would recall the days when they sat in front of the computer, their necks and shoulders aching, but they would just move a little before returning back to the game. Just to practice their positioning. There would be waves in their hearts. What they couldn't forget was the failure of every match. The kind of failure where their throats were blocked, and they couldn't say a word. It wasn't because they had lost. But when they saw the arrogant person beside them lowering his head and clenching his fists unwillingly, their hearts would clench. They wanted to be number one. At that moment, they had an unparalleled desire to win. It was probably because if they won, they would be able to see the radiant smile of the person they cared about again. How they wished that the person they loved could maintain the appearance of a youngster forever. Even after going through so much, their original intentions wouldn't change. Perhaps this was the reason why they were so obsessed with winning. To leave the deepest memory in that person's life. His failure, you know. His glory, you will win together. Let's go. The two faint words brought a sharp gust of wind. Qin Mo was still at the front. When he walked out of the archway, all the lights were focused on him. The next moment, the other members of Supreme Alliance lined up and walked over. Their black uniforms, uniform badges, and their heaven-defying looks gave them an aura. Bojiu was the most outstanding. The fans of Spade were stunned when they saw their idol. They didn't know where the youngster found a black headband. She swept her silver hair back and tied it onto the headband, accentuating her exquisite features. She was as cool as a little prince. The girls lost control, their screams seemingly able to tear the roof apart. He looks so handsome with the headband. It probably isn't because of his looks, but because his hair doesn't cover his eyes when he is gaming. The effects aren't important. Don't you think he's so handsome? The enthusiastic response made the cameraman take a shot of the youngster. He was indeed handsome. The esports players of this year were really impactful. Next, let's welcome the ace team that has been the national champion for 3 consecutive years, Xiangnan. When the host said the 2 words Xiangnan, an even louder cheer came from the audience. The lights gathered and there were countless spots of light. Xiao Jing walked out from the other archway with his team. Beauty Luo and Zhao Sampang stood on his left and right. Not to mention the fact that any one of them was a top-tier player. Some wore spectacles, some were silent. But it was undeniable. The aura that Xiangnan brought out was always different. It wouldn't be replaced by any other team. Perhaps this was the existence of the champion team. They wouldn't be defeated by their looks. For example, Zhao Sampang. The sight of him carrying his keyboard was enough to make one's blood boil. Xiangnan. Zhao Sampang picked up his keyboard, waving his arm. The crowd cheered instantly. Victory! It was the power of the fans that shook the earth. It was obvious that both Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang had never seen such a scene before. After hearing the audience's voices, they couldn't help but turn their heads to look over. Feng Yi looked at them, not bothering to hide Xiangnan's strength. This is Xiangnan. You have to get used to their popularity and forget about the voices before you can think about how to compete. You have seen the matches between Xiangnan and the other teams. The 1v1 is used by them to groom the newcomers. In the past few matches, they didn't even use their strongest formation. You have to force them to use their strongest formation for this match to truly begin. Bojiu picked up the mineral water, tilted her head back and took a sip. She asked, 1v1 for newbies? Who should we send? We'll send a newcomer too. Qin Mo said faintly. Feng Shang. Feng Shang stilled, his fingers trembling slightly, but he didn't panic. A month ago, his captain had spoken to him. They had just entered the regional competition. Chapter 984. At that moment, he hadn't dared to believe what he had heard. His eyes widened and he didn't even stutter. Xiangnan? This is just the first match. If it's Xiangnan, will we meet? This was what Feng Shang had wanted to say, but before he could finish his sentence, the captain interrupted him calmly. We will meet. 5 words, spoken so casually but unwaveringly. If it had been anyone else, they would have felt that the regional competition had just started. How confident would they be able to predict that they would meet the national champion team? But the person in front of him wasn't anyone else, it was Qin Mo. He had become an almighty at a young age, killed 3 people alone and crushed Qin Mo in the middle of the city. Teach the Nile. I'll play. Feng Shang knew how crazy he had agreed to something. But it was this crazy thing that gave him an endless drive. He stayed in the internet cafe more often than at home. The uncle watched as he practiced his assassin character, smoking a cigarette. If you want to play a 1v1, you have to familiarize yourself with the wilderness first. But you have your own reasons for this. Those who started playing in the wilderness are all suited to be assassins. Do you know why? Feng Shang shook his head. Familiarity, intuition, experience, and judgment. The uncle watched him, flicking the cigarette ash. A team can have many trump cards. It seems like the person who asked you to be an assassin believes that you will become a trump card in the near future. As for who that person was, both of them knew it. Feng Yi was the only one who didn't know about it. When he heard Feng Shang's name, he was about to speak. Bojiu reached out and placed her arm on his shoulder. She smiled and said, Manager Feng, as a brother Khan, you should let go at the right time. Since Brother Mo mentioned it, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Other than Qin Mo, Feng Yi was the only one in the team who knew her identity. He glanced over at young Master Qin instinctively. As expected, his gaze was cold. Feng Yi took a step back, caressing his head. I need to go to the toilet. His assistant widened his eyes. But Boss Feng, you are the manager and we don't have a coach. You have to stay behind. F***CK. Can't you see that I'm nervous? Now Feng Yi's mind was filled with thoughts of his brother going up on stage and having a 1v1 with the opponent. He really couldn't relax. She wasn't wrong to say that he had a brother complex. They're here. Yin Hu's words made all the team members turn towards the special guest. Zhao Sampang also had a smug look on his face. Japanese? He must have come to watch the competition in advance to guard against me. What are you talking about? Are you fat? Beauty Luo stepped on him, her long legs beautiful. My little spade is so handsome today. I want to take a photo with you. What should I do? Hey miss, the person you're praising is our enemy. You're so good for nothing. Lord Fatty's words were filled with disappointment. Beauty Luo tucked her long hair behind her ears, a beautiful smile on her face. Let's take a screenshot of Little Spade's corpse after we defeat him. If you love him, let him remember me. When Lord Fatty heard this, he shuddered violently. Indeed, women were the most vicious. The two teams weren't far from each other. When Bojio heard this, she placed the bottle of mineral water down and smiled at Beauty Luo, a hint of mischief in her smile. That smile melted Beauty Luo's heart. She turned towards her captain. Let's poach Little Spade over, he can be our mascot. I can't. Xiao Jing glanced at Hoshino and Yusishin who were seated. Beauty Luo arched a brow. Why? Is it expensive? That's easy, I can provide some savings, I'm quite rich. Because Qin Mo won't let go. This reason. Beauty Luo was convinced. She turned towards the silver-haired youngster, who was whispering into Qin Mo's ear, feeling as though a good cabbage had been stolen by a pig. It seemed like the appearance of the Japanese wasn't as dazzling as her almighty, but it was different for the audience. The screams rose by a few decibels. What did I just see? Hoshino and Exine. I heard rumors that the Japanese would be the special guests. Even though I was mentally prepared, I never expected the two of them to appear. Gosh. They are the world champions. Godly maneuvers, devilish face, Yusishin. When the words left his mouth, the host of the live stream interviewed the analysis expert on Weibo. This time, the Japanese specially sent two godly players to watch the National League. Why do you think so? The person laughed lightly. It's simple, it's for Xiangnan. This year, Xiangnan has recruited many talented players, and the Japanese want to see how strong they are. You are wrong. Based on what I know, players like Hoshino and Yusishin won't listen to anyone's orders. Rather than saying that they were sent, it would be more accurate to say that they wanted to watch. This proves that Xiangnan is indeed strong. What do you think of Supreme Alliance? Indeed, Supreme Alliance is a dark horse, but I think the problem Supreme Alliance faces now is the 1v1. They have to play beautifully to force out Xiangnan's strongest formation. If Xiangnan's strongest formation doesn't appear, it means that the competition hasn't even started. Does that mean the first match is important? Then it should be Spade Z or North of Een Mountain. After all, these two players are very outstanding in individual battles, especially Spade Z. With the abilities of the newcomer king, he should be able to play the first match beautifully. What do you think? The moment the host finished speaking, a name appeared on the screen belonging to Supreme Alliance. Feng Shang. In that instant, many frowned, glancing over to ask, who is Feng Shang? They couldn't be blamed for not knowing. Only those who frequented Zone C knew Feng Shang. As for the others, they hadn't noticed him. In the past competitions, Feng Shang had always participated as a newbie and didn't have much of a presence. Hence, when he was singled out, there were doubts. Under these gazes, Feng Shang clenched his fists and stood up from his seat. Dressed in his combat uniform, he walked to the center of the room and reached out to take off his black headset. Shui Yaoyao looked at his back view, and her heart felt like it was filled with something, because she knew that Feng Shang was the same type of person as her. In the past, they had been afraid of everything in this world, as ordinary as they could be. Now Feng Shang was able to sit firmly under such gazes, lifting his lids to give her a smile. Chapter 985. The player from the Xiangnan team glanced at Feng Shang. From that glance, it was obvious that he didn't view Feng Shang as an important opponent. He had to admit that Supreme Alliance was strong, which was why he had trained for so long just for this match. But he hadn't expected Supreme Alliance to send a newcomer. The player's eyes dimmed. He placed his fingers on the keyboard and logged into his ID, following the sound of the game's sound effects. Both of their IDs appeared on all the screens. The finals had finally begun. At the start, the camera was focused on the Xiangnan player's point of view. Alright, we can see that both players are assassins. There's nothing wrong with that. In professional battles, most players will use assassins in 1v1s. Let's see which team's rookie is stronger this round. Yes, Supreme Alliance is starting to farm. Xiangnan. The shoutcaster paused. He moved his mouse up and broke into a smile. Are they going to raid? Everyone looked towards the Xiangnan team when they heard the word ambush. Following the movement of their gazes landed on that figure, and they couldn't help but hold their breaths. The contestants wearing headphones couldn't see or hear the sounds around them. This was fair for the competition. Shui Yaoyao watched as the figure approached Feng Shang. She clenched her fists anxiously. Compared to Shui Yaoyao, Bojiu arched a brow but didn't say a word. It seems like Supreme Alliance's blue beast is going to be snatched away. The shoutcaster's tone was filled with regret. This was the National League after all. This shouldn't be the standard. Feng Shang, on the other hand, was still busy killing monsters. He didn't notice that danger was nearby, either because he was nervous or something else. The opponent didn't hold back. With a wild punishment, he successfully snatched away Supreme Alliance's blue beast. Next, he leaped towards the middle lane and wiped out a wave of troops. Feng Shang couldn't keep up with the opponent's rhythm. He had to give up and clear the troops. After all, the main mission of the game was to defend the tower. This scene made the audience very disappointed. Supreme Alliance's assassins are too weak. Those who come from the wilderness probably aren't that daring. They probably didn't expect Xiangnan to rebel. It's so boring. He's still guarding the tower, and Xiangnan has taken down his red monster. If this goes on, it'll be a one-sided massacre. That's for sure. Assassins don't have any wild monsters to kill, so what's the point of playing? Their mana consumption is so fast, but they haven't even killed their own blue monsters yet. There's no point in watching this match anymore. The assistant listened to the commotion and turned to look at Vice President Feng. He had thought that Vice President Feng, who was obsessed with his younger brother, would be angry. But now he just stood there looking at Feng Shang, who was wearing headphones. Feng Shang wasn't like this when he was young. His stuttering was not innate, but rather it was caused by a kidnapping. It was also his fault. At that time, Feng Shang liked to play behind him. He was already 6 years old and definitely wouldn't bring a 3-year-old child along. Hence, he purposely walked quickly and didn't want to bring him along. In the end, when he turned back, Feng Yi realized that his brother was missing. If the bodyguards hadn't noticed in time, Feng Shang would have been carried away by the middle-aged man. They were the ones who stopped him at the subway entrance. At that time, Feng Shang was crying so hard that he couldn't catch his breath. It was obvious that he had been frightened, which was how he spoke. Hence, everyone said that Feng Yi was obsessed with his younger brother. Even though Feng Yi was in charge of the Feng family, the final successor was Feng Shang. After Feng Yi came of age, he had voluntarily transferred all his shares to his younger brother. No one knew that year. The middle-aged man had wanted to carry Feng Yi away. He had followed Feng Yi for 3 days straight, and was ready to buy a good price. In the end, he had been stopped by little Feng Shang. Only Feng Yi knew. Feng Shang had told him that there was an uncle he was afraid of. His brother didn't want him to go out, but Feng Shang had found him annoying. An hour had passed thanks to the clues provided by the kind-hearted person. Feng Yi didn't know what Feng Shang had experienced in that hour. In order to keep him quiet, the human trafficker had pinched his arm until it was red. At that time, Feng Shang had hugged him and repeated, "Brother, don't go out by yourself." The guilt in Feng Yi's heart hadn't dissipated. He had watched as Feng Shang grew up. Because of his words, he didn't have any friends and had even lost all his courage. Even now, he sat there in Supreme Alliance's uniform. Even though he was so nervous that his movements weren't nimble, he didn't seem to have any intention of retreating. Shui Yaoyao wanted to speak. Bojiu pressed down on her shoulders, placing a slender finger on her lips, gesturing for her to keep quiet. Feng Shang was still moving his mouse to clear the troops on the top lane. Since there wasn't anyone guarding this side, the 2 waves of troops he brought over pushed down the defense tower. But everyone's attention was focused on the Xiangnan players. No one noticed what Feng Shang was doing. On the other hand, the Xiangnan player noticed it. He smiled, not taking Feng Shang seriously. He darted over, wanting to seize the opportunity to capture him. Unexpectedly, after hiding in the bushes for about 10 seconds, Feng Shang still hadn't appeared. When he opened the map, he realized that he had gone to the bottom lane and was killing troops. The defense tower at the bottom lane was about to be taken down. The Xiangnan player frowned, heading towards the bottom lane. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to capture someone who couldn't even protect the beasts. But the same thing happened again. After hiding in the bushes for 6 seconds, Fengshang wasn't able to head over. When he appeared again, he was already in the middle lane. It's a pity he didn't manage to capture him. That was the view of the audience. From their perspective, Fengshang's fighting style was a little clumsy. But from Bojio's perspective, it was completely different. She lifted her thin lips, placing her arm over his shoulder. Brother Emo, you were the one who taught baby Feng this move. Which move? Qin Emo tilted his head. Up close, he looked indescribably noble. Bojio felt an itch in her hands, but she had to endure it. She revealed her canine teeth and smiled faintly. Brother Emo, be honest. His fighting style is so complicated, it's obviously yours. Is that a compliment? Qin Emo watched her mischievous claws. After suppressing them, he replied calmly, it's not me. Fengshang has been playing in the wilderness for a long time. He definitely has this level of scheming. Bojio arched a brow. Are you complimenting baby Feng? The word scheming was used well. It didn't seem like a compliment. MH. The Almighty didn't give a precise answer. His MH left her speechless. Bojio placed her hands behind her head, a lollipop dangling from her mouth. The Xiangnan player probably hasn't realized that baby Feng is leading him around the field. He isn't clearing troops. Qin Emo chuckled, caressing the youngster's fluffy head. He lowered his voice. You're smart. I'm even more handsome. Bojio replied in a carefree manner. Talent and looks coexist. Lin Feng only wanted to change his seat as he listened. This was the National League. Captain, what was going on with you and Little Spade? How could you be so lovey-dovey in such a serious situation? Besides, he had just broken up with Huzi. No, they had just made things clear. Huzi hadn't spoken a single word to him today. Even the mineral water he was drinking wasn't the one he had given him. With that thought, Lin Feng's arrogance subsided. It was better not to change seats. If he sat beside Huzi, he would definitely be treated coldly. But from what Captain and Little Spade said, Fengshang had a higher chance of winning? He would have to take a good look. Lin Feng didn't like to see his teammates lose. He liked to see his teammates setting traps. Gaming was really a competition to see who had more scheming. However, some of the spectators who weren't sensitive to data couldn't see it. In their eyes, Fengshang's rhythm was too slow. He only knew how to lead troops. He didn't know how to control the assassin character. The assassin had to roam the wilderness. Actually, the spectators weren't wrong. If it was a team battle, the assassin would indeed have to roam the wilderness. But many people had forgotten that. This was a 1v1. Besides, this was a siege game. This time he should be caught. Indeed, he was caught. The Xiangnan player had managed to bring Fengshang down to critical health. His maneuvers were beautiful and his movements were swift. If Fengshang hadn't returned to the tower in time to heal, he would have lost his first life. But at this moment, the Xiangnan player suddenly requested for an outside guidance. It wasn't Supreme Alliance but Xiangnan? The spectators couldn't believe the words that appeared on the screen. What's going on? Isn't the situation in Xiangnan doing well? They're just short of attacking Supreme Alliance. Why did they request for an outside guidance? I'm not sure. Everyone was confused. Why did he have to interrupt such a good rhythm? They weren't the only ones confused. Even the Xiangnan player couldn't understand why their captain had to interrupt him. But there was a type of person who was born to be a leader. Xiao Jing sat there. As the third generation of the Red Army, he exuded an aura that couldn't be ignored. His voice was calm and after the call connected he asked, "Do you know how many towers you have lost?" The Xiangnan player froze, glancing up at the map. The other party had already destroyed 2 of his towers and now, half of the towers in the middle lane were gone. Open the page and take a look at your finances. This was Xiao Jing's second sentence. The Xiangnan player switched swiftly. When he saw the string of numbers, he tightened his grip on the mouse. He has much more than me. Do you know what to do? Xiao Jing's voice was emotionless. The Xiangnan player replied immediately, I underestimated him, Captain. My advantage is in taking the beasts. For the next match, I will clear the beasts and attack the tower at the same time. I won't be led around by him. Chapter 986. That was right, 3 years. How many 3 years were there in life? I understand, Captain. That person moved his fingers, switching to a different page, heading to the bottom of the tower to clear the troops. Feng Shang realized that this person's strategy was different from before. It seemed like his strategy had been seen through. Xiangnan wasn't easy to deal with. Xiaojing looks rather decent, but he's full of evil tricks. Baby Feng hasn't done anything yet. How did he discover it? Lin Feng reached out, watching as the person was about to fall into the trap. That was the logic of losing a prey that was already in his mouth. As mentioned before, the two teams weren't far apart. Xiaojing and Zhao Samping heard Lin Feng's words. He turned his head and was about to argue. Beauty Lin, if we are talking about evil tricks, it should be Qin Mo. Who taught your newcomer that trick? It's definitely Qin Mo, he. Help me tell him that in front of our captain, his tricks are useless. Lin Feng didn't hear anything but the word beauty. He pointed at Zhao Samping and laughed coldly. Don't leave after the competition. Zhao Samping would definitely reply. I'm so handsome, I'm not afraid of you. Fine, I won't leave. Unexpectedly, Almighty Fatty harumphed. I'm leaving, don't even think about beating me up. Bojio. This beauty Luo felt embarrassed when she heard their conversation. She held her forehead silently. They had been in the esports industry for a long time after all, and were familiar with each other. Back then, Zhao Samping had indeed thought that Lin Feng was as beautiful as a fairy and had wanted to push his shoulders. In the end, he had been thrown over his shoulder, almost losing his life. But at this moment, they were still in the competition. Could their habit of quarreling be used in the competition? If you're afraid, just say it. Young Master Lin leaned back. Zhao Samping stretched his neck. Who's afraid, come over now. There would be no end to this. Qin Mo was one of the members sitting in between them. He frowned and said faintly, the camera is over here. The two of them instantly changed their posture. There was no need to talk about how upright Lin Feng was. Zhao Samping's serious expression as he caressed his chin. MMH, the newcomer from Supreme Alliance isn't bad. Bojio. His expression changed too quickly. The existence of the camera was valuable. But the strongest was still the Almighty. Bojio glanced at the two Almighties who were still posing before turning back to the camera that wasn't moving. It couldn't be filming her. Since it wasn't moving, it was probably filming the shoutcaster. Indeed, they were filming the shoutcaster. After all, the audience didn't understand why Xiangnan suddenly requested for guidance. After the live commentator's explanation, the people's gazes on Feng Shang had clearly changed. Feng Yi heard the commentary as well. The corners of his mouth curled up. Even his eyes were smiling. This was the first time the assistant had seen their Vice President Feng so young. Their Vice President Feng was known as the Smiling Prince. No matter what, no one could tell his true emotions. His fox-like personality was most suitable for dealing with people in the business world. But today, President Feng really smiled. The audience, who felt that the match was boring, held their breaths and looked at the screen. That was because Feng Shang's fighting style had changed. On the screen, the two assassins were like two gusts of wind, fighting in the wilderness. With a single shot, Feng Shang took half of Xiangnan's HP. That person didn't back down, following up with a big move. He retreated and jumped back to the tower, using a health pack to clear the soldiers. His speed was so fast that no one could catch him. The battle went on for more than 5 times. Each time, the two of them were evenly matched. The match, which was supposed to end in half an hour, had gone on for an hour. None of the players on the screen had died, and the number of defense towers hadn't changed. Everyone watching felt like their eyes were having a hard time, not to mention the players who were constantly switching pages and maps. To be able to reach this stage wasn't just a test of survival, it was also a test of the map. In other words, during the battle, they had to constantly pay attention to the soldiers on other routes, eliminating them before they reached the tower. When they were clear, they had to be wary of the enemy's attacks. If it wasn't for their hand speed and familiarity with the map, they wouldn't have been able to do it. Some people were stunning the moment they started a battle. As for some people, the longer they competed, the more you realized how amazing they were. Be it Fengshang or Xiangnan's players. Compared to their maneuvers, their left hands were tapping on the keyboard while their right hands moved the mouse. Their side profile was more attractive. At first, there weren't many people in this world who were working hard. After all, you and I both know that this is a world where relationships and looks are the most important. But when they saw the two of them, they felt that hard-working people were really handsome. The 10th battle took place on the high ground. Fengshang took the initiative and caught the opponent red-handed. Lin Feng was instantly energized, waiting to see how Fengshang was going to take the first HP. But at this moment, Qin Mo frowned. "No, I can't," Bojiu asked. Fengshang had already cut the opponent into half. But in that instant, Fengshang's fingers paused, glancing at his screen. He was out of mana, which meant that he was out of mana. The game notification stated that without mana, the big move wouldn't be displayed, which was fatal in close combat. Xiangnan's player seized the opportunity, turning to lock onto him, activating his big move. Fengshang's hands moved swiftly, entering the bushes with a beautiful set of footwork. He avoided the fatal blow. Just as everyone was about to heave a sigh of relief, Xiangnan's player chased after him. He didn't give Fengshang any time to recover, locking onto him with his second skill, using his strongest attack, KO. It was the first HP since the start of the battle. The atmosphere was ignited. Xiangnan. Victory. The first kill was the best way to boost morale. It wasn't wrong. That wasn't all. At this stage of the competition, the death meant the loss of the city. Fengshang watched as the timer ticked down, his fingers constantly switching the map, trying to see where the opponent was attacking. Xiangnan's player hadn't returned to the city. Instead, he had used a wave of troops, using the blood-sucking knife to recover his HP, fighting his way out of the city. 9-8-7 Fengshang watched as the numbers jumped, gripping the mouse tightly, wishing that the time could move faster. Finally it was 1. Fengshang was about to rush out when the sound of the city shattering came over. Silver shards fell from his hair. Fengshang froze in a daze. He watched as the screen in front of him darkened bit by bit. Chapter 987. Lost? Almost everyone was in disbelief. But the competition had ended. The lights dimmed over at Supreme Alliance's side. Xiangnan's side was the only one left. Fengshang was still holding onto the mouse, prepared to dash out in the fastest way possible. The results appeared on the screen. 0v1 Xiangnan had won the first match. Come, let's take a look at the head count. The shoutcaster was the first to recover. He had wanted to report 0v1. However, when he saw the data, he was stunned. The head count is 1v1. What was going on? The audience exchanged glances. The shoutcaster shot the director a look, cutting into the replay. Everyone then saw that after Fengshang came out, his ultimate skill accurately landed on the Xiangnan player. If it wasn't for the super soldier beside him, in this round, Supreme Alliance might not necessarily lose. In fact, they might be able to turn the tables since Xiangnan had one less defense tower than Supreme Alliance. But there weren't many ifs. A loss was a loss. Xiangnan's contestant was the first to stand up. He took off his headset and walked towards Fengshang. As he brushed past him, he said, "You're amazing." There wasn't any concealment in his words. It came from the microphone. In that instant, the entire arena erupted in applause. Fengshang paused. "You too." His performance on the arena was steady, like a sharpened sword from a youngster, possessing the stability and sharpness that he should have. At this moment no one asked, "Who is Fengshang? I've never heard of him." Instead, they used applause to express everything. Fengshang left the arena, glancing at Coco, turning his face over. Coco had always relied on acting cute to make his millions of fangirls happy. He had never coaxed a guy. Her cute face tensed up, and she didn't say a word of comfort. Damn it. He stuffed his rabbit into Feng Shang's hands. Here. No, you don't have a rabbit. You're going to the washroom anxiously. Feng Shang's voice was hoarse. Coco bit his tongue. Who said I was nervous? Before the start of the match, you went to the toilet 5 times. Feng Shang's breathing was still a little heavy. Coco reached out to stop him. Don't talk nonsense, little stutterer. I was just going to wash my hands. Bo Jio watched from afar as the 2 kids leaned against each other. She wasn't sure what they were thinking, but she knew that this time, Feng Shang didn't need any guidance. In a match like this, a strong self-healing ability was also a kind of growth. Next up was the 2v2. Bo Jio glanced up at the screen. Someone once said that Xiangnan's 2v2 was an unbreakable defense. Because they were a pair of twin brothers, they had an innate tacit understanding. In this aspect, no one could compare to them. There was also Lin Feng and Yin, who Bo Jio arched a brow. Something seemed amiss. She glanced over and asked Lin Feng, "What's wrong? They didn't decide the winner on the bed yesterday. Is that why you're angry today?" Lin Feng glanced at Yin who was wiping his hands with a tissue and making the final preparations. He sighed deeply. "Stop talking, I have to coax someone." Bo Jio frowned. It seemed like there really was a problem. Lin Feng took something and walked towards Yin Hu. He felt that since Yin Hu didn't want to drink the mineral water and didn't want to use the tissue, he shouldn't reject his wrist guard in front of so many people. Chapter 988. Lin Feng's idea was good, but he didn't expect to see Yin Hu already wearing his wristband. It was a newly bought Nike wristband. Lin Feng, who wanted to take action, could only stand there stupidly with his wrist guard. He looked at the face that hadn't looked at him since he came in. His throat felt a little uncomfortable, and he had the urge to fight someone. Couldn't they be brothers just because they couldn't be lovers? Lin Feng was infuriated. What was he going to do? Take it off and wear mine? Yin Hu glanced at him, but didn't move. Lin Feng clenched his fists. This scene was extremely embarrassing. But they were about to compete, and he couldn't be affected by his emotions. Lin Feng drank a mouthful of water, lowering his head to calm down before wearing the wrist guard. Feng Yi walked over. At this moment, the manager was still useful. He swept them a glance. The competition is about to begin. Both of your problems can be resolved after the competition. I don't need to elaborate on their skills, you should be aware of their chemistry. But since Xiangnan has sent them out, it means that they are getting serious. The 2v2 will determine if there will be a team battle, but you should know that neither Spade nor Qin Mo can participate in this round because in the team battle, other than the 2 of them, no one else can go against Zhao Jingluo's team. You have to win this round to continue the competition, and Supreme Alliance's hope will depend on you. Understood. Lin Feng reached out to remove the wrist guard on Yin Hu's left hand. Yin Hu couldn't help but glance at him. That fellow was tugging him and putting something on his hand. Yin Hu stilled when he saw the picture. It was a wrist guard from a long time ago. He had probably given it to him when they were in junior high. Back then, this fellow had been doing things that infuriated him every day. He had told him to ignore the girls who sent him love letters. But he had been more concerned about them than anyone else, always sending them into his hands. Back then, Yin Hu hadn't been sure what he was thinking, but he had been annoyed. He was annoyed that this fellow was a busybody. Compared to that, he was more annoyed that this fellow had no morals at all. He would accept the snacks that the girls sent him. He wondered if the food he bought for him was not enough for him to eat. He bought a wrist guard, sprayed the word reject on it, and put it on that guy's wrist. At first, Yin Hu thought it was long gone since a certain someone had fought with him to pluck it. From the looks of it now, it wasn't that he didn't cherish it. He watched as the man put on the wrist guard seriously. Yin Hu thought, this time he wouldn't make things difficult for him. He just couldn't like himself the way she liked him. In fact, Lin Feng was already very soft-hearted towards him. He had always known that. That was why he had reached out for a yard after being given an inch, thinking that he could have more. It was probably because he was always being watched. Lin Feng's old face was a little awkward. He muttered, even if I'm handsome, you can't look at me like that. What are you suspecting me of? Let me tell you, I must win this competition. If I win, I'll let you press me down. In that instant, Yinhu thought he had heard wrongly. His gaze sharpened as he asked hesitantly, "What did you say?" Chapter 989. Yinhu glanced at Lin Feng, but didn't say anything. Lin Feng was puzzled. He was already rushing over, but Yinhu wasn't going to accept. Seriously? Voluntary? Yinhu interrupted Lin Feng's thoughts. Lin Feng replied. Yinhu tilted his head. Are we going to your house or mine? We'll talk about this after the competition. Lin Feng lowered his voice. Yinhu retracted his gaze, glancing at the figure in front of him before glancing down at the wrist guard on his left hand. Next, he lowered his lids, opening his mouth to bite the corner of the wrist guard, tugging it upwards. His handsome face along with his actions sent the fans into a frenzy. This was simply a pink blush. The wrist guard was a gift from Lin Feng. Their almighty Yin had bitten down on it. Even though it was just a touch of his lips, it wasn't any different from biting someone. Lin Feng glanced over when he heard the noise. That was the scene he saw, his back trembling. Zhao Sampeng caressed his chin. Supreme Alliance seems to be good at creating a CP. Captain, why don't we do the same later? Isn't it just a wrist guard? Creating a CP depends on one's face, Beauty Luo replied lazily, poking him with her finger. Beauty Luo said lazily and poked him with her finger. Your face is hopeless. Zhao Sampeng wanted to say something, but Xiao Jing stopped him. Xiao Jing stopped him with one sentence. Focus on the game. The 2v2 officially began. Lin Feng, Yinhu, and the Xiangnan twins were all seated in front of the computer with their headphones on. It was obvious that this was a 2v2 that everyone felt was evenly matched. After Feng Shang's style in the previous match, the analysts didn't dare to analyze it casually. The shoutcaster remained neutral. The score between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan is 0-1. This means that as long as Xiangnan wins this 2v2, they will become the national champions once again. This match is undoubtedly the crux of the day. Supreme Alliance probably won't let Xiangnan win so easily. Lin Feng and Yunhu's teamwork is one of the best in the circle. Sending them out is the best formation Supreme Alliance has. Speaking of the best duo, I watched the replay of the last Supreme Alliance match. Qin Mo and Spadesy's teamwork is very suitable for this 2v2. But in this case, Supreme Alliance will definitely lose the team battle. Qin Mo has to stay behind to deal with Xiao Jing. That's the logic. Following the commentator's explanation, the game page appeared on the big screen. Both sides had chosen the same lineup: main damage dealer and warrior. A warrior's HP was higher than an assassin's, and it was also a test of hand speed. Through this competition, we can see that Supreme Alliance's players have more or less improved. In the past, each of them used to specialize in the same character. Now it seems different. Supreme Alliance's performance is worth anticipating. Be it Lin Feng or Yinhu, they are both unique players in terms of individual and team battles. However, their speed seems to be slightly slower than Xiangnan. Indeed, he was almost there. Not because of anything else, but because of their teamwork. From the start of the competition, the audience had noticed the unusual teamwork between the Xiangnan twins. When the main damage dealer took down the red beasts, the warrior would move first and use his second skill to help. When the red beasts were left with less than half of their HP, the warrior would pull up and move to the bottom lane to clear the soldiers. This maneuver was much faster than the jungler. Chapter 990. As compared to Xiangnan, they were still using the same solo style. This style might be able to balance both sides, but in reality, it had a fatal flaw. Yu Cixin smirked, placing his hands behind his head. There was a sharp beauty to it. If Supreme Alliance continues to fight like this, the competition will end prematurely. Hoshino didn't make any comments. His eyes were fixed on Supreme Alliance. Even his action of picking up a bottle of water to drink was recorded by the media. Unless it was an international competition, it would be difficult to watch both of them appear at the same time. Hoshino remained silent. which meant that he agreed with Yu Cixin's words. Supreme Alliance's double fight had to be a double fight in order to win. However, every team was different from each other. Or perhaps Supreme Alliance had their own way of fighting. But regardless, it wasn't possible to continue with the current pace. However, it wasn't clear when Qin Mo would interrupt the competition to guide them. Hoshino tapped the bottle in his hand. He had always wanted to know what exactly was on Qin Mo for Z to care so much about him. Xiangnan's fighting style is stable, the wilderness is clean and Supreme Alliance isn't given a chance to come over. They didn't even forget to clear the troops. Since there wasn't any breaking point, the shoutcaster could only introduce the situation. Supreme Alliance is still moving the troops. Let's take a look at the top lane. Are they preparing for battle? The moment the shoutcaster finished his sentence, Xiangnan's player used a big move to attack Lin Feng. The other DPS player hid in the bushes, blocking the way. Such a strong attack was fatal to Lin Feng, leaving him with less than a third of his HP. If it had been a 1v1, Lin Feng wouldn't have lost, but it was a 1v2 and he was in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, there was a healing bag under the defense tower. If not, the second skill of the main attacker, Big Cannon, would have sent him back to the city with low HP. Beautiful, the shoutcaster said. It's a pity they didn't manage to take the first HP. Xiangnan's main attacker hid in a good position, blocking the path, and in the later stages, they would have been able to kill him instantly. Now Lin Feng is hesitating whether he should continue guarding the tower. Another cannon shot. This is really when the two from Xiangnan unleash their skills at the same time. You can dodge one of them, but it's really hard to dodge the other. Their coordination is too good. One on the left and one on the right. Lin Feng should have returned to the city to heal himself. If not, if this drags on, he'll definitely die. If he doesn't defend, this tower will be gone. It seems like Xiangnan is going to suppress Supreme Alliance in all aspects. Wait a minute, Yunhu is here. He's going for the back row. What a beautiful move. However, it was useless. It was a 1v2 and the other party wasn't a newbie. The moment Yunhu arrived, Xiangnan's main attacker activated his sprinting skill. His attacks were well practiced and difficult for warriors to catch. In addition, there was another person restraining him. No matter how good Yunhu's skills were, he could only retreat to the bottom of the tower. His HP had dropped by half and it wasn't worth it. Everyone realized a problem. The rhythm of the match was in Xiangnan's hands. Chapter 991. The 2v2 was different from Fengshang's single match. Even if Fengshang lost, there was still the next match to win. But if they lost the 2v2, it would be the end. At this moment, Supreme Alliance's fans started to panic. Previously, Shui Yaoyao hadn't been able to understand the pressure that Feng Yi had mentioned. At this moment, when Supreme Alliance was being suppressed, the cheers from Xiangnan were hard to ignore. Sometimes, the cheers from the audience could affect the emotions of the players. Hence, regardless of the competition, their mental state had to be strong. No one knew if Lin Feng was affected or not, but he looked a little anxious. Shui Yaoyao glanced over at the youngster with a lollipop in her mouth. Both Highness Jiao and young Master Qin didn't seem to have any intention of guiding them. But this was the first time she saw Highness Jiao watching a match so seriously. Her expression was different from usual. This meant that Lin Feng and Yunhu had met a strong opponent this time. Shui Yaoyao didn't know much about tactics, but when she saw that her team members didn't even have a chance to get out of the tower and were suppressed again and again, she understood the current situation. In the audience, someone pressed down on his cap, but couldn't control his mouth. F***CK, it can't be, Lin Feng and Yunhu's performance is terrible. I can't believe we lost to Supreme Alliance. Captain, tell me, no matter how good they are, why are Lin Feng and Yunhu running away? They weren't like this during the single match. The person who spoke was Lin Chentao. He wore a hat to prevent himself from being recognized by the fans. He also put on a mask for his captain. The two of them sat in a hidden position. Even though there were many spectators nearby, they weren't among them. That was right. Almost all the teams were present for the match between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan. They were there just for the match, which was captured by the media. Lin Chuntao and Rao Rong weren't among them because of Rao Rong's current status. Before the investigation was completed, he couldn't return to the team. Besides, Lin Chuntao hadn't forgotten Director Huang's words. Their captain was still in danger. That was why he made such a disguise. Honestly, he had hoped for Supreme Alliance to win. After all, Supreme Alliance was the one who had defeated them and prevented them from entering the National League. Besides, if they lost the 2v2 match, Qin Mo wouldn't be able to win. If they lost the 2v2 match, Qin Mo wouldn't have the chance to play again. Lin Chuntao knew better than anyone else. Their captain wanted to watch the match between Qin Mo and Xiao Jing. The three of them had joined the professional team at the same time. Even though they were in different places, they had the same obsession. Their captain and Xiao Jing's greatest regret was not able to play against Qin Mo at his peak. Due to various reasons, the former number 1 team in the country had not been able to enter the national competition for 3 years. But things were different now. Supreme Alliance's team. With her around, Qin Mo wouldn't have to worry about anything. This year, Supreme Alliance's was the strongest team ever. If he walked here, he would be broken. He Chintao's would be the Team Lin team. Lin Chintao's. Chapter 992. Their individual fighting ability was too strong. This might be an advantage in a 1v1. In a team battle, Qin Mo would be the one commanding, balancing everyone's abilities. But in a 2v2, it wasn't an advantage. If they didn't get along well, the two of them would be too outstanding in their individual fights, and would be suppressed by the opponent. It was impossible for Qin Mo not to know about this. But why did he send these two out? It was simple, it was a gamble. The other members of Supreme Alliance weren't a match for Xiangnan's duo. If Lin Feng and Yun Hu teamed up, they might be able to fight, but it was too risky. That wasn't all. What worried Bojiu the most was the rhythm of their typing. Because of her background, she was especially sensitive to the sound of the keyboard. The two of them were so well coordinated that even the keys of their left hands were on the same line. It was indeed a difficult fight. Kata. Xiangnan launched a new round of attacks. This time it was stronger than before. Supreme Alliance's defense tower is about to be destroyed. The shoutcaster's voice landed. The first defense tower destroyed appeared on the screen. This match seemed to have gone by much faster than the previous one. In less than 5 minutes, a defense tower was destroyed. Was Supreme Alliance really going to lose? The fans were worried. The viewership ratings outside the arena would increase. Lin Feng and Yun Hu weren't like Feng Shang. They had been in this circle for too long. So long that they had experienced Supreme Alliance's prosperity, and also Supreme Alliance's fall. They had been gaming for so many years. They couldn't afford to lose. Yucixin yawned lazily. From now on, Supreme Alliance has to take back the rhythm. If not, this match will be too boring. I woke up early to watch your favorite little spade. Don't you think so, Hoshino? Hoshino glanced at him. Yes. You admit it so readily. Yucixin tugged his collar, his aura exuding a devilish aura. Why hasn't Qin Mo asked for any guidance? Probably because of trust. Hoshino glanced at the youngster's dark eyes. There was a light in them that he had never seen before. Qin Mo wasn't the only one who had changed Z. Even the other members of Supreme Alliance had warmed her up. Otherwise, the light in his eyes wouldn't have dimmed even now. Yucixin pondered over this word. Trust. That was something he rarely got or believed in. However, he was curious as to why Qin Mo didn't move. Wait for the two of them to get used to each other? Was that even possible? In such a short period of time? Xiangnan had already started dismantling the second defense tower. It was as if the two of them had a shield and a knife. There was not a single flaw to be found. From Bojiu's angle, Lin Feng's eyes were bloodshot. He had all the energy in his body, but he couldn't find a suitable way to release it. He watched as the tower of his faction fell so quickly. A sense of unwillingness started to gather in his palms. How could he lose like this? He never wanted to see that person's head lowered ever again. Especially when he was about to leave. Chapter 993. Europe. In reality, it wasn't far. It was just a day's flight from Jiang City. But Lin Feng knew that it wasn't the location that pulled them apart. It was their plans for the future and their circle of friends. Sometimes Lin Feng would always be afraid. This fear was something that he had since he was young. He was afraid that his brother, who was always with him, would one day fall too far behind him. After all, that person was so outstanding, be it in studies or fighting. In order not to be looked down upon by that person, he who wasn't very smart, started to study harder than others, practicing his skills and playing ball. Lin Feng understood that people could be like that when they were young, doing whatever they wanted. But it wasn't like that when they grew up. Lin Feng didn't tell Yunhu that the Lin family was moving. Moving away from the courtyard was equivalent to leaving a circle. In reality, it wasn't that bad. Anyway, the Lin family was rich. But it was different. The Yin family was powerful and they only had one son, Yunhu. Although Lin Feng appeared to be naive, he was actually more farsighted than anyone else. No matter how much Auntie Yun liked him, it was because he was Yunhu's brother and nothing else. The Lin family couldn't take any more provocation. It wasn't that Lin Feng's parents didn't mention sending Lin Feng overseas. But Lin Feng understood that they needed him to stay in the country, be it at the company or at home. The Lin family was defeated. Some things would change. Both of them had been eating well since they were young and they were equally matched. Lin Feng was afraid that Yunhu would be studying abroad while he was a regular at the dining table. When that happened, they probably wouldn't have anything to talk about. No matter how deep their relationship was, it would slowly fade with the difference in social status and location. Only by winning. That was the only way for that person to remember forever. He, Lin Feng, had appeared in his youth. Lin Feng glanced at Yunhu. That person was still defending. The second tower hadn't shattered. They still had a chance. At this moment, Lin Feng's right hand stopped. He suddenly changed his direction. He didn't head to the tower to provide support. Instead, he ran to the jungle to kill monsters. Yunhu's gaze shifted. He looked at that person's serious side profile and smiled. He continued to defend the tower. He had no intention of returning to the city to heal even though he didn't have much HP left. Xiangnan's players prepared to cross the tower and attack. Yunhu took a step back to avoid the soldiers' advance. Then he moved nimbly to the bottom of the tower and counterattacked. Of course, this counterattack wasn't enough for Yunhu to take the first HP. On the contrary, Yunhu's HP was lower than before. Fortunately, a healing pack came out, allowing him to replenish his HP and avoid the danger of being killed. The Xiangnan soldiers who had just charged into the defense tower had lost a third of their HP. Chapter 994. The atmosphere seemed to have sunk to its lowest point. Especially Supreme Alliance's fans. Their voices weren't as loud as they had been at the start. They had never seen the Feng Yin duo being suppressed so miserably. Yin, who had been guarding the tower, and hadn't come out. Even if they didn't understand, they understood that it was going to be difficult for their favorite team to win. Anxiety seemed to be contagious. At that moment, they felt that the Feng Yin duo shouldn't exist. If they had fought separately, they would have been able to utilize each other's strengths. But now, they were dragging each other down and weren't able to work together. Fans were a strange existence. There was one thing that Feng Yi was right about. When girls saw two handsome people, they might say that they were a good match, but when it came to reality, they wouldn't be giving their blessings. Just like now, there was already a small grudge between the fans. They felt that Lin Feng hadn't been there to support them in time, hence, they started to make a fuss. They were also divided into the fans and the CP fans. Actually, Lin Feng doesn't have any special abilities. He's indeed a little fast, but if Almighty Qin and I were to fight together, we would definitely win. But Almighty Qin and I will definitely win. Lin Feng wasn't online the whole time. I don't even want to talk about his operation. From the past until now, when didn't he rely on me to turn the situation around? If we really want to compare, Lin Feng was also brought up by me. In the past, for my sake, it didn't matter how you guys tried to create a couple. But now it's obvious that Lin Feng has implicated me. It was unknown if the media was deliberately trying to stir up the topic, but they singled out this fan, and even broadcasted it to let the audience see this scene. Bo Jiu frowned instinctively. She was angry at the director's actions and the words. Perhaps when some fans liked a person, they would really treat that person as their own family, but they never thought about whether or not they were really good to their idol when they did something. It wasn't a good method to trample on someone to like someone else. Besides, if Yinhu had heard this, he would have smashed his mouse. For some fans to explode at this time meant that this problem had existed in the past. But Bo Jiu glanced up, her gaze landing on the naive Lin Feng, who was still focused on moving his mouse. She lifted the corners of her lips. He had heard some of the words, and had probably digested them himself. Lin Feng hadn't even told Yinhu about the extent of the situation. There were indeed a lot of fans of the couple. There would be a lot of cute couples. Even if it was just a normal interaction, they would still talk about love. Once the fans felt that one of them was not worthy of the other, they would say anything. As someone who had been through it before, Bo Jiu knew their tricks. They wouldn't say anything on the surface and would send you a private message secretly. When she saw the first message, she immediately blocked it. She didn't know what Lin Feng was doing. It was just that she and the Almighty had only been a couple for a short period of time, and there were already a bunch of people who wanted her dead. In the past few years, how many times had Lin Feng received comments like, "You're not worthy of our Cloud University. You're so bad at games, don't drag our Cloud University down?" At that time, Chapter 995. Lin Feng was thinking about how to win. Yes, from the start, the naive Lin Feng had been thinking about how to win. The first time someone said that about him, he would explain himself, explain the game, explain that he wouldn't be a burden to Yinhu in the future. But for the 100th time, he looked at the private messages and told himself that he couldn't let that person lose again. Or perhaps you people are nothing, knowing that I'm the most upset if I lose. I'm a straight man. Why would I form a CP? He would suspect if he was really a burden to that person. For the 1000th time, he sat in front of the computer, practicing his hand speed for 8 hours. He practiced when his skills couldn't keep up. He wasn't that smart. Since young, he had to spend 3 hours or even half a day to memorize the key points that Yinhu could remember in an hour. Sometimes Lin Feng would think that if it wasn't for that person, reminding him to work hard, he would never have become such an outstanding person. And now he just didn't want to lose. It wasn't just because of that person. It was because if he lost here, those days of training in front of the computer, Yao Yao's dream of becoming more dazzling, Uncle's return to his original self, Baby Feng's month of hard work and Little Spade's absence. For these people he couldn't be a burden to anyone. Lin Feng moved the mouse. The view on the screen switched to Yinhu's side. Because compared to Lin Feng, this battle seemed to be more interesting. Yinhu's positioning and speed were especially beautiful. So much so that people couldn't help but ask what exactly Lin Feng was doing. Why didn't he replace Yinhu? Didn't Lin Feng know that Almighty Yun was on the verge of death? Just as the fan said that, a line of words suddenly appeared on the big screen. The Tyrant King has been killed. Tyrant King. The two from Xiangnan paused, immediately switching to the small map. But they realized that Lin Feng hadn't just killed the Tyrant King. He had also wiped out the minions in the bottom lane and the beasts on their side. But that wasn't the end. Just as they were switching to the small map, a figure appeared behind them. It was the warrior controlled by Lin Feng. It was the warrior controlled by Lin Feng. He immediately marked the opponent's main damage dealer in the back row. He raised his ultimate and followed up with a second skill, followed up with a critical hit. As Lin Feng's speed was too fast, coupled with his current finances, he was the highest in the entire arena. Everyone knew that maneuvering was very important in Hero. However, there was another important factor in the game, and that was the economy of both players. Having more money meant that your equipment would be better than your opponent's. The better the equipment, the greater the damage. In other words, with the same operating methods and skills, Whoever had a higher economy would basically decide who would live and who would die in this PK. It was too late for Xiangnan to activate the backline protection measures. In melee combat, ranged damage dealers were always vulnerable to attacks. Moreover, Lin Feng had jumped over directly, leaving no chance for Xiangnan to react. So it was too late. Not only that, but Lin Feng seemed to have seen that they had finished their big moves before he stabbed his spear in. Chapter 996. The First Drop of Blood. First kill. Just thinking about these words would make one's blood boil. Not to mention, when they saw the word KO appear on the screen, they instantly stood up with explosive force. The screams almost tore the roof off. Everyone's gaze fell on Lin Feng. His eyes shone with a bright light. The fan who had been saying that Lin Feng was a burden to Yun, who felt his mind go blank for a moment, his expression turning ugly. However, no one was paying attention to these messages. Even the commentator was stunned for a second before he hurriedly said, "Beautiful. This move is really beautiful. Let's see the replay." Basically, no one watched the replay. This was because Lin Feng didn't return to the tower after killing the main damage dealer. Instead, he took a step back and stood in front of the Xiangnan warrior. Half health versus full health. There was no big move yet. What was Lin Feng trying to do? The shoutcaster was confused. But soon he understood. Yin Hu, who had been standing at the bottom of the tower, had moved. After eating the HP pack, he sprinted and pierced through. The two of them trapped the warrior from Xiangnan in the middle. Yin Hu's big move took away half of the opponent's HP. Lin Feng dodged to the side and followed up with his second skill. With a beautiful set of footwork, he closed in to block his opponent. It had to be said that the Xiangnan warrior's positioning was beautiful. Even at this moment, his maneuvers weren't messed up. With a dodge, he managed to shake off Lin Feng. But it was only temporary. Every time Yin Hu's attack landed on him, his HP would drop rapidly. Lin Feng didn't even give him a chance to breathe. One of the twins waved the mouse and saw that they had escaped back to the tower. They should be safe now. With less than half of his HP remaining, he used a high-level skill. Tower Assault. Two more words appeared on the screen, accompanied by an exciting sound effect. Double kill. All of a sudden, the arena was in an uproar. The shoutcaster maintained his rationality. Lin Feng's HP is severely low. If he crosses the tower like this, wouldn't he be trading a life for a life? Looking at the screen again, it was indeed very thrilling. However, the young man smiled with the lollipop in his mouth and only said two words. No. Bo Jiu replied because she could tell from Lin Feng's attack just now. She wondered where he had learned the Almighty's calculation methods. He was actually able to use it. Even though Lin Feng was still being attacked by the defense tower, and his HP was getting lower and lower, he still managed to escape from the tower and hide in the bushes. He was about to return to the city with only a sliver of HP left. It would be belittling Xiangnan if it ended just like that. At this moment, Xiangnan's main long-range attacker stood in the middle of the city. Based on his many years of gaming experience, he fired a long-range cannon at Lin Feng, who was about to return to the city. Lin Feng, Yin Hu, Bo Jiu, the shoutcaster. Almost everyone had the same expression. Lin Feng was almost petrified. From the way he held the mouse, it could be seen that he had been in that position for a long time. After all, even Xiangnan's side didn't expect that the attack would really hit. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.